We've had a relatively quiet hurricane season so far, but don't be fooled. August and September are notoriously active months for severe weather and hurricanes. As we continue into the most dangerous part of the season, GOSEP is giving tips on how to prepare before it's too late. We are here to talk about the do's and don'ts of hurricane season. What's the main thing that people really need to know going into hurricane season?
Well, this hurricane season particularly, so many of our communities in South Louisiana remain vulnerable because of the impacts of the storms of 2020 and 2021. So a number of blue roofs that are still out there, families that are living in trailers and other sorts of temporary housing. And so for all of those reasons, it's important for people to have a plan.
So like you were saying, a lot of people, they're still vulnerable from what happened in 2020 and in 2021. I still have sandbags by my house from Hurricane Ida. Is that something that I'd be able to use this year for hurricane season?
Probably so. Sandbags, typically if they're not in the sun where they might deteriorate, are something that can be used and do have a shelf life that allows them to stay. And so certainly that's something that you can take a look at. So those are some practical things, and certainly paying attention to where local governments might be making sand available to put in the sandbags is important as well.
So you were just saying, everybody would be prepared. Local governments have their own way of getting everything distributed the way it needs to be. Are you guys anticipating having to do that this year?
So we plan for being ready to support our local partners every year. All disasters really start and end locally, and so those are the most important decision makers that we here at the state are ready to support, and connecting with our federal partners. But really, understanding what our locals' plans are, being ready to support them is a really important part of what we do at the state emergency management and in our state EOC is really to take in those resource requests that local governments might make to us and to be able to support them.
So it's August now. Hurricane season starts in June and it's been relatively quiet. Does that mean that anybody should be having their guard down?
Certainly not. So when we look at the past, when we look at just the past 2 years, when we get into mid-August, really through September, that's when the real height of hurricane season ramps up. The experts at the Hurricane Center continue to predict that this is going to be an active season. Certainly our hope is that Louisiana would be spared after having been through so much the last few years. But in terms of planning and being prepared, certainly we can't let our guard down just because things have been quiet so far.
The other thing I want to know about is flooding. Okay. A big part of hurricane season is the flooding, not just the winds, but how do you prepare for something like that?
Yeah, flooding is something that we deal a lot with in Louisiana, both in North Louisiana and in South Louisiana. It really can be associated with hurricanes, but it can be associated with just heavy rainfall. There certainly are areas where, in low-lying areas, flood-prone areas, where if a family knows that they flooded in the past, that's something that they need to be aware of and have a way to get out and notify loved ones that they're safe. And I know that there's been a lot of discussion about some changes to the flood insurance program, but we would still encourage everyone to talk to their insurance agent about the need for flood insurance and work through that process to make an informed decision and potentially be able to buy flood insurance, because your regular homeowner's policy is not going to cover damage from a flood.
So if you're from Louisiana and you've lived here your entire life, you're really used to hurricanes and the idea of flooding. But suppose you're a new person, you're an implant, you just got here. What is something that you think is overlooked that maybe they should know?
Our flooding can, because of the rivers and the bayous and all of the waterways that we have, sometimes the flooding can last a long time. It can isolate. And so in terms of that, it's really just practical things of having food and water at your house that's not going to spoil, so that you've got something that you can, if there's going to be a day or so where first responders can't access you, that you're able to sustain your family and that sort of thing. And so it's just the practical advice that we would give anybody of having a plan, staying in touch with family and loved ones, being able to take care of yourself for 72 hours in terms of food and water, always having your devices charged, knowing where your documents are for your home and the important documents, and keeping those safe. And then really planning for recovery, whether it's a hurricane or a flood, being prepared to take pictures if something is damaged, document what is lost and keep those records, because all of that's going to be important later on.
All right, so is there anything else you'd like to say that you feel I didn't ask?
I think that's good from our perspective.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.